This
48
conference
million,
will now be recorded.
an additional $48 million were included in literally the final hours. Like the same day that they passed the budget, they put 48 million more in. It was a nail biter, I'm gonna say. But the money comes from different buckets. There's some temporary COVID money, about 45 million that they've already allocated, with another 11 million and some change that they're going to use on one-time expenses. And then $109 million of the 170 will be specifically to implement Guidehouse. And you'll hear things like dedicated funds, encumbrances. A lot of what we talked about this session is making sure that the money that they're investing is annualized so that community providers can plan, can hire staff, can make plans as it relates to residential and day services and other programs. So we're really fighting for this money to be annualized and make sure that it stays in the budget, and more to come, because the Guidehouse study actually said to stabilize the community provider system, it's going to cost $800 million over a 5-year time frame. It's a lot of money, right? And it has to be annualized, which means that it's not just one time, give us $800 million and walk away. It means over time, it has to stay in the budget. So the DD budget was the largest budget they had, I don't know, right, Lori, in our history. Huge money. And then this was included in it. So, I mean, it felt good this year to have them hear us and have them understand that Guidehouse is actually a way to invest the money wisely and to invest it in places that are actually going to make a difference for the short term and the long term. So there was that, I think that pretty much separates the money that we received. But they are talking about how long it's going to take to implement the Guidehouse study. The study itself says, let's get it implemented in 5 years. So the first year would have cost $329 million, with $100 million from each year moving forward for the next 4. So a total of 5 years. Now that we've received 170 million for FY22, they're going to have to reevaluate how that $800 million is going to come together and how long it's going to take. So just know the fight is not over. The fight has just begun. But you know what? Having all of you tell your stories to legislators, it's the only way. It's the only way for them to understand. For staff and parents and participants, people who are consumers of these services, we need to tell that story. We cannot be a budget number. We are people. You are people. We have staff that are people that provide the services. We have the people that we care for, and we have the families who worry every day that you're not going to be able to take care of your loved one, or your loved one's going to, need something that you're not going to be there for them. So we, it's worth it. It's worth the advocacy. So the Guidehouse study is our proof, is our blueprint. And let's see, I went through the COVID money. Oh, the other thing that happened this session, which was kind of exciting, was a lot of federal money. You've heard of the CARES Act money. That was, the first wave of COVID impact money. But now there was a lot of money that came in the spring from what they're calling ARPA, ARPA. It stands for American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA. The state got $7.5 billion. B, lots of money. It's supposed to last 4 years. This year for FY22, they spent 2.5 billion of that 7.5 billion. So there's more to come. That's good news, right? Because that's a way to help defray some of the costs. But again, this is one-time money. It's not annualized money. So what we're fighting for is annualized money. Can always use the ARPA money for things like programs that are one-time investments or capital. There will be a lot of capital coming from ARPA money. So we continue to fight for that money, but the money we're talking about long-term is annualized money. Let's see. Okay, so I broke down the money. And then last but not least, and something that we're working on for reinforcement of revenue is CARES. We call it CARES, but it is passing referendums that are 708 boards and 377 boards, either at the county, municipal, or township level, so that we can also receive local money that is raised locally and invested locally. It's another way to get resources for the services that we provide, with the state having their focus on the guidehouse and implementation of the guidehouse. By passing these referendums, we can receive money locally and have it stay local. So we've been working on those resources as well. In the last election, kind of a fun story, Milton Township went to pass a referendum, and on the night of the election, they lost by less than 100 votes. But when the votes were finally counted, all the vote by mail, the referendum passed. So in Milton Township, in the center of DuPage County, they passed a 708 board referendum, and it was super exciting. So, and that was done because of all the advocacy and because of parents getting involved and consumers getting involved, and frankly, Lori pushing people to do the right thing when it came to referendums, and she's working on other things that we can talk about later. But I think I've given you a lot of detail on money, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have as it relates to either the guidehouse study or the budget moving forward, which, by the way, starts July 1st and goes through June 30th.
Laura, before we start asking questions, can you kind of line out when some of these things are going to start? Because the guidehouse study won't start on July 1st.
Sure. I obviously didn't print out that second slide. So some of the one-time money will go into effect July 1st, and there's some wage increase money, and there's a 5% CILA increase that will go into effect July 1st through the end of the fiscal year. And then there is some ICF money for ICFDDs, 15% rate increase that will go into effect July 1st through December 31st of 2021. That's one-time money. We hope for certain things to be annualized, of course, and we will fight for that, but that is money that's not related to Guidehouse. The Guidehouse...
And I just point out, Laura, that money can be thought of kind of trying to stabilize the system right now and bring some resources in to try to get some more staff, et cetera, hired with that 5% CILA rate increase, which was slated to go off at the end of June here. That being continued will be helpful resource to have, and the 15% of community day services increase being continued through the end of the calendar year will again help with having a little more cash on hand so that hopefully we can do some incentives. We also are planning and really strongly advocating with all of our local ARPA recipients. So ARPA did not just go to the state, it went to every county and every municipality, and even the non-incorporated areas will get money through the state for ARPA. So we're actively advocating with Kane County, Kendall County, Elgin, Aurora, for funds, and they specifically have funds that are to support and pay essential workers. And so our ask is at this point with some of those funds, since they're only one time, we can't make them a salary increase, but we could make them sign-on bonuses and retention payments for new hires and people who remain hired, for a certain amount of time. And so we are strongly advocating for that, as well as for some capital funds from ARPA, along with things that will help access mental health, substance use crisis, and other social services.
I think it's important to say that, as much as we worked on Guidehouse and focused on the implementation and getting as much money as possible for Guidehouse, it was also very important to share with legislators that we can't wait till January. And why we have to wait is it's a very technical process, but when you have something like Guidehouse and you're trying to increase a rate, you have to get it approved by federal CMS. And not to get too deep into the nitty gritty of things, but to get that approval, you have to have, you have to get input from providers, and then you have to have a 30-day process, and then you have to send it in to the feds, and then they have to give you feedback. The long and short of it is it usually takes 6 months. And it's all to say to the feds, okay, we want to increase rates, and to get their approval, of which, is Medicaid matched, they have to approve it. And so this process takes longer than it should, in my opinion, but it doesn't, it is detail, and there are other states, we're not the only ones, so I guess I should be more understanding. But to do that and to wait we just need stuff now. We need money now, we need staff now, we need staff to be appreciated now, we need all of this now. So we went to the administration and said, we understand and we appreciate the process, and we appreciate that you are taking this Guidehouse rate study and doing something with it, but we can't make it to January without some sort of revenue. And they looked and helped find this revenue so that we can do the things we need to do in the interim. And those are some of the things that we are investing in to make sure that we stabilize what we can now while we wait for the Guidehouse study. And the estimated time frame is January 1st, but it could be after January 1st. So this money now is super important. And then at that time, there's priorities with Guidehouse that will be implemented. And I do have a slide for that, but I don't have it in front of me, but I'm more than happy to share that breakdown with you in detail.
I'll pull it up while people ask questions.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you. Anybody got questions?
You have to unmute yourselves if you want to ask a question.
Laura, I don't have a question about Guidehouse, but I'm wondering if there's any movement at all in the administration toward further closures of big developmental centers that gobble up a huge amount of the DD budget.
I love that question because Lori and I talk about this issue all the time. There hasn't, that issue has sort of been on the back burner for a bit. And I think some are a little nervous because of what happened um, when the Murray situation happened, and there was a stop on that closure. So I I I hear a little bit more of people talking about long-term opportunity or possibility, but it really has been on the back burner. And you know what, Jim? There have been people in the administration who have said, um, it's time to get back to that, or at least talk about the possibility of that. Because if there's ever going to be a place where there's money, that's how to get to the money. But I think it's going to be a while. I think that now they're focused on stabilizing through Guidehouse, and maybe towards the middle or end of that implementation, there may be a discussion of, well, where else are we going to get the money? And that might be brought up and brought back from the back burner to a front burner. But it kind of went away for a while. Not out of mind, but out of sight,
That was my
maybe.
sense, and that,
Yeah.
yeah, that's been my sense, and that there's not, I don't see much on the advocacy websites that that I'm a member of, and so.
There's a
Yeah.
lot still that gets pushed from ICDD and self-advocates and the ARC around that in the Coming Home campaign. But the appetite to, frankly, take on unions has not been strong in the Democratic
Mhm.
caucus. So unfortunately, that's really what it's tied to realistically.
Yep, that's been my sense too, is that that's the political third rail that you do not want to touch if
Yes.
you're an elected official. So, yep,
Well, and Jim,
need some courage out there.
we really went head to head with the unions as it related to some of this money. And frankly, just even last week, still fighting about it. You know, there's the unions want a mandated pass through, even though that doesn't make a lot of sense. I think community providers like AID should be able to um, know. Lori knows where the money needs to go and where it's going to be most useful, and that's what we should be allowed to do, and not be told that you have to give a certain amount of money no matter whether you're union or not. And we still fight with that every budget, frankly. So
Frankly,
to take on the
if you look at
unions
the
at the
guidehouse,
SODCs.
I'm sorry, go Laura.
No, go ahead, Lori.
I was just going to say, if you look at the Guidehouse recommendations, it does build in wage increases. So, they don't need to push a pass through because it's built into 150% of the minimum wage, right? Which is
Minimum wage, right? Yep.
um,
Yep.
and um, and the business labor standard index being used for basically the rest of the types of positions, which is approved and going to be implemented in that $109 million at the beginning of next year if the CMS waiver gets approved quickly enough. Yep,
Good. Thank you, Laura.
Yep.
I have a question.
Sure.
We are a home-based waiver. So what we've seen over the years is that we applaud all the increases from the agency side where they get their rate increases so that the staff can be hired and stuff. But on the home-based side, our home-based waiver hasn't increased. So what we're seeing is that we used to go, we get 19 days of services. Now we're down to 12 days of services. That's all we can afford to pay with the home base. So we're having to private pay over and above that. So is there any relief coming for that home base? Is that rate going to go up as well? Or is that just out of your realm?
I did not see that in the breakdown for FY22, but I know there was talk, but I don't see anything for FY22, but I can ask,
Nothing
of
was
course.
put in the budget that I'm aware of, but I know that it's been raised as an issue, Kathy, multiple times, that the spending power of the HBS portion, which is actually legislated and will have to change legislatively, is shrinking, right, because of the increase of the rate, and you still have that same amount of money to spend. And so they're looking at how to advocate on that behalf. I've heard Director Stark talk about it, so she recognizes that it's an issue as well. And I know we're a part of the Institute, and Kathy Carmody has talked about this as well, and people are well aware of this. And so we will follow up with them to see if there is a plan moving forward. I think so much of it is, these are huge numbers, when you talk to legislators and people start to get spooked, and they are nervous about all of these pieces. But all these conversations have to be had in tandem because it's a system as a whole, right? I do know that important people are definitely aware of those issues, and that we will make sure we put it on our list of stuff that we're talking about as well, Kathy.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And the other thing that the director of DD just talked about last week was the rate calculator. And, that is a huge issue. And I know that would, what your home base would be a part of that discussion. And as the director said, the rate calculator has to be adjusted and it has to be updated. I mean, if we're really going to stabilize the system, it's going to be expensive, and it's going to be important that it's all done at the same time, like Lori said. So if we start working on the rate calculator, which of course would include home-based as well, I mean, we're talking like a lot of money, but it cannot be done in parts. Like what we're doing right now with the FY22 budget and investing 170 million from Guidehouse in the spring. To do the rate calculator, you have to do it all at once. You have to bring it all up at the same time, right? If you're going to change the rates, you got to do it all at once. And this is going to be something that we're going to be focusing on a lot, and doing a lot of advocacy around, because, Lori, you mentioned, a big number. I mean, legislators actually said to us, well, this is more money than you've ever gotten, ever. I mean, how could you even ask for more? This is more money, when we were asking for more than 122 million. I mean, a couple of legislators made me feel like I should be ashamed, and I thought, I'm not ashamed, because you keep saying you're going to do something for us. Well, this is what it's going to cost to do that. So, it's an expensive investment, but it's one that needs to happen.
So I'd like to point out on Laura's breakdown up here that's on the screen, that asterisk at the bottom for earned income is a really important thing. There's a piece of legislation that also passed during this session that codified this, actually, that was also recommended in the Guidehouse study, and that was to no longer penalize people who work by taking half of their income and giving it to the provider, and instead allowing a person who is going out and earning their pay to keep all of their pay, and it not harm them, and it not harm the provider by taking money away from them. So, here at AID, we pretty much didn't follow through on dunning people that we supported in giving us half their paycheck, right? But many people, I mean, that affected your bottom line. And so it will be helpful to us that will no longer be a harm to us. And it's also such an exciting inducement for people with disabilities who want to think about working, but who of us wants to work and give half of our money to someone else, right? I mean, I don't,
Right.
so I'm sure, that was a deterrent to many people. A couple of the other things that are going to mean something more to providers than it meant to families is we used to get paid for 1,100 hours of community day programming, and there are 12 months in a year. So one full month at least we did not get paid for delivering a service for all the people that we supported. And so under this implementation of the guidehouse recommendations that will hopefully be approved by CMS and rolling out in January, we'll get paid for 1,200 hours, which means a full year of funding. Another piece that will also need to be approved, but that is proposed in the guidehouse study is, believe it or not, we don't get paid for 24 hours of service, even though we're required to give 24 hours of service, right, in 24-hour SILA. So we don't get paid for all the hours that we're required to provide service. So there's about 5 hours a day that are required to be at CVS, and we would get paid for about -2 hours in a SILA 24-hour setting. And so that's going to be fixed as well. So you'll get paid for those full services. Again, it's not going to affect the service that you receive because you got that support anyway, right? If you had a loved one that was in 24-hour SILA, we just didn't get paid for it. And so we had to figure out and raise money in order to cover staff over 40 different SILAs for 2 extra hours a day, right? That adds up to quite a huge expense. And so both of those things are going to help stabilize the system even more. I'm going to take down the slide now unless anybody wants to keep it up so we can see each other better.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have other questions? What are some, another piece of legislation I think that passed, Laura, was the right for a person to stay in school after they turn 22 to finish out their school year, right?
Right. House Bill 40. It was a bill that took 2 years to pass, actually, partially because the school board association opposed it originally because they felt it was too costly. But then COVID. So after all of this time and negotiating, House Bill 40 passed, and it allows a person who's in special education to be in school until the end of their school year when they turn 22, whichever's later. So now, it's not, okay, you're 21, tomorrow you're going to be 22, and, it's February and you can't go back to school. It just seemed ridiculous. And finally, the General Assembly agreed. So I don't anticipate there being a problem with the governor signing the bill, but it will probably go into effect next school year, which is very exciting. Very exciting. I think what we need to do is get it to 23 years, because that's the age that that we should work towards because of LIGUS and because of people falling out of services in between special ed and adult services. There's still work to be done, but that was a big win this year, I think.
Very good.
Can't think of
And
any
what
others.
is the
There was a lot going on this session with
yeah, what
Guidehouse, you know.
can you give us an explanation, Laura, of CESA and sort of an update on that? Wasn't that the one around, the police departments would be required to, have mental health professionals assisting on lots of their
Oh,
social work calls?
yes. I don't, Lori, you might know a little bit more about it than I do. Yeah, but it was a way to kind of address the defund the police issue, and make sure that there were mental health professionals available. And I know that AID provides a lot of assistance to first responders, and does a lot of trauma work, which thank God we do. And but I don't have a clear update for you, but I can get you one.
Yeah, and I know the Access Living was kind of the lead on that, and it was kind of more led from the mental health side. So I did not see as much on it. I want to say that I think it passed, but I don't know if it was changed at
Too.
all. I can't remember. And one of the things that I will say is that, on that front, the uh, uh, Department of Human Services has put out a very large crisis services application in order to begin to get our crisis service system into place to deal with 988 calls nationwide next year. So there's a federal bill that passed a couple years ago where you know how we have national 911 calls for emergency. A 988 call is a mental health or suicide call, and it will go into a nationwide system the same, so that you can dial the same number wherever you're at in that situation, just like you can with 911. Like, you don't have to know what the police department number is. You don't have to know what the suicide hotline or the emergency crisis line is in the area that you're in order to get those services. And so I think all of these things are going to intersect across how they all get implemented, right? And then you come to communities like where AID does services, where we have contracts with a lot of our law enforcement partners across our service area in order to deliver these crisis 24-hour-a-day services and get called out to sites. And so we don't want this stuff to mess up existing relationships as well, right? So it's all like kind of how it's gonna get put together is kind of unclear at the moment, because as usual, the state kind of released some funding without really having a clear plan of how they wanted that funding to work, if that makes any sense. But it's kind of their MO in many ways, right? But part of it is they're also taking advantage of these federal funds that they are receiving in order to try to help seed and build out these crisis programming.
And I'll try and get some more information and pass it along, Jim.
Other questions? Anybody? All right, well, I'm gonna update you on a couple of things, that we are doing in this in some of these buckets, right? So we just recently announced a 75-cent an hour pay increase for all AID employees effective Sunday. That will start. That's our first step as we're waiting for the full $1.50 to be approved by January. So we figured we'd start with 75 now and do 75 in January when that is approved. We also have tomorrow, every AID staff, full-time and part-time staff member who started by June 20th or earlier will receive 1 week of retention bonus in order to say thank you for all of the hard work that they've done over the past year plus during this pandemic crisis. We also rolled out a vaccination incentive payment program. If you are fully vaccinated by July 15th, you'll get $250. By August 15th, it's $200. By September 15th, it's $150, and by October, it's $100. As to incentivize people who have not yet gotten vaccines to get those done, because $250 is a nice amount of money to put in your pocket if you get that done. And everyone who has already gotten those and has turned in their record will receive that $250. Also felt like it was part of our responsibility to be able to help get to herd immunity for all of us, right? And are working towards that. We also just found out 2 weeks ago that our payroll protection plan funding that we received was fully forgiven. So, that is very, very exciting. And so hopefully that it will stay forgiven and nothing will happen during audit or anything else. But that gives us a little bit of cushion right now, and that's very nice to have. Believe it or not, at the end of COVID here, we're probably better off financially than we've been in a very, very long time. So we're very happy about that, and please, we were really blessed to be able to get a lot of COVID relief fund. We're still on top of all this money that's going on. Believe me, I'm at every one of these townships and counties and cities, bugging them about what their plan is for their ARPA money, and believe me, we have shovel-ready projects to go on those. So we have made an offer on the property that we reside in Aurora here, where the Thompson Center, Keeler Center, and the administrative offices are. That offer has been accepted by Inc. We have $500,000 in funding from our state legislator, Representative Barbara Hernandez, that was initially introduced in the fiscal year 20 capital budget of the state, and then has rolled over to this budget that we are in process of accessing towards that purchase, as well as another $100,000 that we already have in hand from DCEO, which gets us within less than $100,000 of what the difference is between what we offered on the property. So we're very excited about that. We're starting a property and building review with Cordigan Clark, which is an architectural firm that is based in the Aurora area, but they're a national firm, and they're going to help us review and look at all of our properties, plan for the next 3 to 10 years, what properties we need, what we need to do to properties, tear down, rehab, sell, keep, all those kind of pieces. As I think I've said before on this meeting, I think our initial plan will be, and part of what I'm asking for in ARPA money is tear down of Keeler Center and reconstruction of that building to fully meet the needs of the people that we serve there. We also have some big development of our 16-acre parcel in Elgin underway, and so we're asking for ARPA funds for that property as well, which will include some housing as well as a community and social service building that we will share with Easter Seals of DuPage and the Fox Valley, as well as Genoa Healthcare, which is a closed door pharmacy that we partner with that works in tandem with the people that we support and our staff in order to fill the pharmaceutical needs of the people that we support. So We've got, I think, a lot of exciting things going on. We've got several applications out. We have applied for part of that crisis funding that I talked about to the Department of Human Services Division of Mental Health to build out our crisis and victim services and our crisis response, as well as an application into begin working in the aging system with our partners at Age Guide, that is the area agency on aging that covers the counties that we support. So we are continuing to, oh, I forgot to tell you the most exciting news. And so we just, as you may or may not know, Wanda Thomas, after 47 years, will be retiring this year. And we have been in the process of interviewing for her position, to fill that position. Obviously not fill her position because you can't replace Wanda, but somebody has to do the job. And so in that process, we came out and we had two really great candidates, and they both really had some unique strengths. And so we were able to not only offer to an internal candidate, the vice president of IDD services at AID, but we're creating a new position that's called Chief Innovation Officer, and bringing in the other person that had a lot of great experience from outside the organization to look at how we improve the innovation and our services at AID. The ways that we can comply with home and community-based settings regulations and improve our services across the board for all people. We got a lot of great plans in place. And then we were able to raise an internal position and make it become a position called the Vice President of Equity and Inclusion, that for us is going to not only look at inclusion and equity around staff and racial issues, but what that means for our clients and their equity and inclusion in the community as people with disabilities who are often left out. So we are very, very excited. The two internal ladies, Courtney Littlejohn, who is currently the director of our Employment First program, will be the VP of Equity and Inclusion, and she starts this Sunday. And Stephanie Norwood, who was a director of residential and day services, and has been with us for more than 10 years, starting as a Q and working her way up through the organization, will be the vice president of IDD services starting this Sunday. And Casey Burke, who is the person who's coming in from outside, who currently works at Little City and actually works for the Division of Developmental Disabilities as their Employment First person for a few hours a month, will be starting on August 9th.
Yay. Woo!
I'm very excited. I also want to let you know that we are planning a shindig for Ms. Wanda that will be on August 14th from 3 to 8 p.m. Here in our parking lot. I'm hoping to get the hospital to let us put a tent on the grassy area in front. It'll be a drop through kind of open house picnicky kind of deal. And we will have a program, probably about 5 or 6 p.m. We'll be sending out invitations. The invitation's supposed to be where our goal is to have it ready by the end of next week, so the invitations can start going out so people can get it on their calendar. Wanda's last day won't be until the end of August because she graciously, the 27th of August, because she graciously agreed to stay for at least 2 months in the transition to help the new person that is coming in. We are thankful to her for that. And so, yeah, I think we had a lot of great things going on at AID. I'm very excited about. Kathy?
That was incredible. There's a lot. You've been very busy. Are you exhausted?
I try not to think about it.
I have a question. When you, if you are going to rebuild on your existing plant, where do you displace them to, the clients, for in the interim?
So we'll probably have to either rent someplace, or I don't know if we'll have a space within Thompson that we can make work. But I think that we'll have to rent someplace for a while. I don't know any other way to do it, but move out of that building, get rid of it, build our new one, and then get them back in as soon as we can. But that's going to take a little bit of planning, and that's why I'm hoping, glad about Cordigan Clark. We also have been talking to some architects that I've known for a long time that really have a specialty in understanding DD needs, particularly sensory needs and other pieces, so that the design can be really functional for people in terms of the types of paint and materials that you use, lighting, sound, windows, et cetera, right? And so, I'm hoping that we'll be able to work with them as the architectural firm that would actually do the plans for the actual building. But the first step was getting them to accept our offer, and the next step is actually getting the contract done and buying it, hopefully outright, with the money that we have, ready to tap into, and, starting this process with Cordigan Clark in order to review all of our different sites and see what our needs and stuff are. So believe me, we're on top of this and trying to do it as expeditiously as possible because of this access to ARPA funds that have a really limited use, right? They not a lot of people can use them, and we're poised to use them for the very things that they're allowed to be used for. And not a lot of people will be able to do one-time payment, one-time work, which you can with capital projects, do one-time work, get your building up and going, and be able to get it going. So that's our, that's our goals, and that's what we're working towards. I'm really excited about it, and hopeful. And if we need any of you to help us schmooze some legislators, we'll be reaching out, right? Because there's lots of different communities that have this money, like I said: Aurora, Elgin, Kane County, Kendall County, DuPage County, McHenry, DeKalb, lots of cities, the state, so and we continue, Laura and I continue to work on, we worked a couple of years ago on a really great plan, right? Laura came up with this great plan when they were working on a capital budget in 2020. And we went to all our legislators, state legislators, and we have 30 that we serve some part of their district, and ask all of them to put us in the capital budget for either $50,000 or $100,000, depending upon, how many people we served out of their district. And many, many people did, because most people were coming to them and asking for millions of dollars. And when you ask for, a small amount, you put all those small amounts together and you got a bigger amount, right? So we're going back. That's where this $500,000 is for Hernandez. We did a lot of reminders in the end of session here that this money had to be reappropriated within the last budget bill that just passed, and they did that. And so we're getting aggressive, assertive about asking for how we access that money and begin to use it, because we have projects that are ready to go. So they always talk about shovel ready. We got shovel ready. Sue?
I do have a question, and I don't know if you can answer this or not, and maybe it's kind of theoretical, philosophical, whatever. But I know that Larkin has opened up, and I know the concept of water's edge, and I presume the building on 31 may follow along that sort of thing. And I know that's something that you've really been into, Lori. So I guess my question is, down the road, are you looking at that being the primary residential availability? And will you be looking at maybe closing houses or doing away with houses, or what?
So I think that's a good question, Sue. And I think that, home and community-based services settings regulations is going to require some changes. So AID already complies in a lot of ways with some of the requirements within HCBS. So at this point, I don't see SILAs, quote unquote, going fully away. But for a long time now, we have not bought new properties ourselves to create new SILAs. We have partnered and gotten people into these low-income housing tax credit properties and other properties in order to do a SILA within a building that we don't own or maintain, and that is much more like any other person can go and rent, rather than 4 to 8 people who are not related by blood living together in a single family home, right? It's always been my career, right, to try to open up affordable housing options for all people, and so people with intellectual and developmental disabilities are kind of the last bastion of persons with disabilities that don't often get the opportunity to live like other people get to live. We are going to continue to push that envelope. But small, I mean, many people, many other states that have gotten rid of quote unquote group homes, they still have shared living. They have 2 or 3 people that share a house, very similar to what we do right now, right? Because the majority, all of our houses have no shared bedrooms, right? And they have 24-hour support that the people need. But to be more flexible, you got to have less people. And if you want to, continue to broaden what people are able to do in their daytime and their free time, right? You can't have 8 people at a house with 1 staff person, right? It just doesn't work. So, so I think we've begun along a path a long time ago when they chose, and this was long before I got here, when they chose to go to single occupancy bedrooms, and they've continued down that path under the leadership of Wanda, and then being able to access these other affordable housing options in the community, and being really smart about how they did that has opened up other potential. And so I just see us continuing to try to both tap into other developers' properties, right, and help people get into those units and provide services there, as well as develop properties of our own. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I did have one more question as far as that. Now, my understanding is that the sort of thing you're looking at is the low income housing, and is it the state does not allow there to be a mixed income kind of model? Is that correct?
It is a mixed income. So it's like 30, 50, and 60% AMI in a low income housing tax credit property.
Okay.
So it's just not, there's not 100% of AMI, but if you look at AMI in Kane County, it's pretty high, right?
I'm sorry, what's AMI?
Oh, I'm sorry, area median income.
Okay.
So median income in Kane County is where that 30, so you're either 30% of area median income, 50% of area median income, 60%, 100% of area median income, right? That area median income, I'm trying to think what it is for a 1-person household. It's pretty high in Kane County. So 30, 50, and 60% of that is a good mix of people. And when we look at that low income housing tax credit property that we're proposing for the Elgin property, in my mind, many of the people that work for us would be eligible for living there, as well as people that we support. So there's lots of opportunity for a mix of persons. It's not, all the same people that are exactly the same living together, right?
Yeah, I've just talked with different parents who have said, gosh, wouldn't it be great if you could have some sort of a setup where my child can be, and then I can be, they can be in one place and I can be close by, but in my own place, that sort of thing. But for some parents, that wouldn't,
Yeah.
they wouldn't qualify.
Yeah, well, there are properties that are actually working on that. In Aurora, there's a property on Copley Copley Hospital grounds that's looking at developing for purchase condos, and the idea is to have kids with disabilities in a condo and their parents in the condo on the same property. But you got to be able to afford to buy a condo for both of you, so. It just kind of depends. We'll have a spot. There's room for 4 buildings on that 16-acre lot, and we have 3 planned buildings at this point. So who knows? Maybe we could come up with a 100%, a purchase for a condo if people really wanted to do that. But we'll see what happens. Sometimes people that can buy a condo don't want to live where people are making 30% of area median income either. So there is some NIMBY issues that come into it. Jesse?
Yeah, I have a quick question, and I don't know if you can answer it. My husband and I are trying to decide when and if to send our daughter back to Keeler for the day program. And of course, one of the big questions is the staff vaccinations, as well as participants vaccinations. And I know because of confidentiality, but how do we make that decision if we don't know if it's going to be safe for our daughter? It's kind of a tough spot.
Yeah, it is. So they just put out some guidance, Josie, from the Division of Developmental Disabilities around CDS, right? And about how you could group people who are all vaccinated with staff who are all vaccinated in cohorts, right? In a classroom. And we haven't made any decisions about that, but that might be something that you might want to talk to your Keeler contact about, if they're would consider looking at something like that. Like I said, that's part of the reason why we did the vaccination incentive, because we wanted to encourage more staff. And frankly, we have the majority of our clients, all the clients that we support are vaccinated, except for we've got a handful of people that was medically, their doctor said they could not get vaccinated medically, that it wasn't indicated. So, the vast majority of clients are, it's staff that are less vaccinated. And so again, that's another reason why we put that incentive in place to try to up that number. But I would encourage you, and I will write it down myself to ask as well, about the possibility of cohorting with vaccinated clients and staff in a group.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy, did you want to ask something? No? Oh, I'm sorry. I saw you unmuted, so I didn't know. Any other questions? Jim said that the power went out where he was where he was at, so he is sorry that he fell off the call. But the power went out and Wi-Fi crashed, so he lost everything. He says it was a good conversation, so we apologizes for falling off. Any further burning questions for Laura or myself? I do want to really say thank you to Laura for spending time with us tonight. It's really helpful. I really enjoy working with Laura, and we kind of get our heads together and connive about the best way to try to push things forward. And the good thing is that we're both persistent. So, we'll just keep I'm going to keep calling you every week until I'm going to go sit in your office until you talk to me. So, and Laura's the same way. So, perseverance.
And you all inspire us, I mean, I just, you all inspire me, and Lori and I keep each other sane, and it's a great, it's a job worth doing.
And Lori, real quick, I know we've struggled a bit with the communication processes, and you've talked about that before, but as these things come up that we can contact legislators on, I would love to see something that's directed to those of us or to the guardians or whoever of AID, because it allows us to tell that story to them, and it makes it more personalized. I know I'm active in iPad Unite, and they put all those things, and I signed witness slips, and I sent my story, and I contacted people, and the whole deal. But it would be great to see it coming from AID and saying, this is what you can do, that sort of thing.
Those out through our constant contacts, and we did send out a bunch at the end of session around witness slips and some of those pieces. So if you're not getting that, Sue, you need to let me know, and I'll get you on there. But that is part of the purpose of this group, right? We've said
Right.
that advocacy is one of our 4 pillars. So we do need to think about what does that mean, right? Now, like, how do we build you into more, of our visits with legislators? How do we, now that people are coming back, how do we have people come visit our site like we used to, and then have families and consumers there, to talk about their experiences? And it's time to start, really kind of working on that again, and getting that out. And so we'll continue to plan on that. I've been talking to our resource development department about that, about having a plan in terms of meeting even with our very, very local people, so like even your township and your cities and your other folks, to understand, because I can't get over still how many people have never heard of AID that live in Kane County, and it just blows my mind, because I feel like we're almost more well-known out by the rest of the state and by, by state government and that, than we are, even in our own community. And that means we miss, opportunities to get special funding or to have people donate to us or other things. So, we work on that all the time. It's in our strategic plan. It's part of what, we're aiming for. But we also are, Sue, working on improved processes to keep people up to date about not advocacy stuff, but like what is happening, all these exciting things that are going on at AID, and choices and decisions that we're making around, bringing people back, different programming, all those different kinds of pieces. So we sent out a letter. I hope you all got it, about a month ago, and are trying to continue. We'll be coming out with our summer newsletter soon. We do those Friday focuses every Friday to try to keep you up to date on something that is coming that's on email. So if you don't get that, let me know. We are also been sending to legislators once a month what we call hot topics, which is, information about the thing of the day that is a problem, issue, challenge, something that we need help with to keep us uppermost in legislators' minds all the time. And that does go to all of our, it goes to county officials, township officials, state and federal officials, and their all of their staff, that we can figure out what their addresses are, and send it to them all the time. So we just the clients, the CDS clients, just made a video that we are tweeting out to all of our legislators, that's asking why they have to continue to wear masks at work when they're vaccinated, and other people that are vaccinated don't have to wear their mask, right? We are trying to do all kinds of different ways. I don't tweet, but luckily a young person works for us who does tweet, and he's tagging all the legislators with our video, of our clients saying, hey, because I'm tired of them asking me and me having to tell them the state's making me do it, right? I'm like, let's tell legislators the same thing, because they come to me every day and say, I got a shot. Why do I gotta have this on? I mean, and it's like, I totally get it, right? And we are still, masking in all our common areas and in all our programs. And as a matter of fact, the Department of Public Health wants us to have everybody living in a Scylla mask, including the clients that live there that are vaccinated. And I refuse to do it for the clients, because I'm like, I don't have to keep one on in my own home when the people that I live with are, vaccinated. The staff needs to have it on, but people that live there should not 24 hours a day have a mask on. That's just wrong. So, but people are trying to err on the side of caution, which I understand, but the vast majority of people that live in Scyllas at AID are vaccinated. All right, well, thank you all very, very much. Really, really appreciate seeing you again. I hope I hope this was helpful, and gave you a little bit of good information, and we'll just keep on moving ahead, and we'll see you again on July 22nd at 7 p.m. Thanks, y'all. Thanks, Laura.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Bye.
Thank you. It's been a wealth of information.